Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, we're going to be discussing budget decks. I do want to stress that this is post Darkwing Blast. I am switching up content from before Darkwing Blast to post Darkwing Blast. So you have a lot of different types of content on the channel right now. So there's something for everybody. Someone looking for a couple ideas before Darkwing Blast officially drops, because there are a couple events. But this list in particular, a couple of them are useful right now when it comes to those decks, and a couple of them are going to be better post Darkwing Blast. So with all of that being said, quickly before we get started, I just want to shout out my patrons: Dudley Reiner, Crimson, Consular 10, Nude Banner, Jonah Rodriguez, Ariel Kersey, and Roy Kier. I'm very much grateful for you guys' support, and if any of you want to support me on Patreon, you can always find the link in the description below. This is the first deck we're going to be covering. Basically Despia, in my opinion, and I said this in my best decks video, which is the last video on my channel, and make sure to check it out if you maybe haven't yet. Despia is very consistent. It's very, very powerful. Its plays aren't that reliant on only monsters or only spell and trap cards, but because the board is a mixture of both, it has a very good time going first because it doesn't necessarily lose to one type of going second card. It's also very hard to hand trap. Against Despia, I think it's much better to have some kind of going second disruption when it comes to, like, I don't know, a DD Crow in your turn for their target for Branded in Red, or some kind of way to deal with their expulsion and banishment. Like, it's not necessary that your hand traps are going to do that much to Despia unless it's Ash. Ash is incredible, but because Ash has been seeing a lot of decline, Despia naturally started to go up in popularity. So it's also very, very accessible. Almost everything that's important has been reprinted in the structure deck, and if it's not from the structure deck, it did receive reprints because Aluber, Masquerade, some of those cards also opening were expensive, but all of them received accessible printings throughout the months. So I think Despia is like the top choice out of all of these decks. Oh yeah, I think it is, like, among the top choices. The next one, which is also really, really good, is Flunder. Again, I tend to mention Flunder in all of these lists, but I cannot make a list like this without Flunder, if that makes sense. Like, it's obvious that it's cheap. It has been for some time now, but it's still such a good contender. Not only is Flunder a very smart choice right now, just because of what it does, it's really, it's a really good counter to the meta right now, but its counter, which would be Dimension Shifter, is also getting more and more accessible. It did get the reprint in the 2022 Megatins, but before that, it was quite expensive. And right now, after another reprint in the Crystal Beast structure deck, like, everything is getting so accessible in the deck. The entire engine has been cheap for some time. Ryza received a reprint. Like, you know all of this already, but I just still wanted to point Flunder out. It has some lines that may seem a tiny bit easier than some of the other decks. There's still always, like, decision making involved with any kind of deck, and I think any kind of deck can you know, help you grow as a player in different ways, if that makes sense. So there's that. And the next one we're going to be covering is Sky Striker. In my opinion, is still a very, very good choice, solely because of the Tear Lemon matchup. The Tear Lemon matchup is incredibly free, and with Sky Striker also, you need to be a good player, I think, to pilot it to its biggest potential. And it also utilizes Mystic Mine. So it being able to utilize Mystic Mine is naturally a pro. And actually, like, Mystic Mine is sort of like, it's almost a $10 card at this point, but I would still consider decks that utilize Mystic Mine budget, because most of the engine is usually cheap, and then you invest in a couple of cards like Mystic Mine, which is going up in price again. So it's just stupid. But yeah, it utilizes Mystic Mine, and I think with Mystic Mine, it's a very important how you play it. You need to make very good decisions when it comes to playing Mystic Mine, when you're going to turn it off, how you're going to do it. Do you have enough power to OTK? Do you have enough ways, even if you're not able to OTK, to just control the game still? Have you amassed enough resources? Like, Mystic Mine is not only about outdecking your opponent. That's not the case most of the time, actually. You just want to get to all of your resources, because what Mystic Mine is, at the end of the day, for these kinds of decks, it's just a way for them to sort of play at the same pace the decks are right now, because power creep naturally happened. Now with Sky Striker, they did lose Fiber, which is very, very important. It was actually a very cheap card to pick up as well, so it was overall a great addition to the deck for a very long time now with the access code, Selene, and Fiber OTK package. But still, like I always say, you do get to those cards through other ways. Like you have your Charmers and you can link climb into other things. And without Fiber, and maybe if you even got Selene, you have more space in the extra deck for cards like Ningirsu, cards like Unicorn if you maybe didn't include them before, or more names of Sky Striker links, which we also started to cut down to free up space. So overall, like at this point in time, you probably know what the Sky Striker deck does already. So I won't get into that, but it's just a very different strategy which teaches you a lot and has a ton of space for very meta-specific, tournament-specific actually tech cards. You have so much space to play about 15 or even 18 hand traps if you want to, so you have enough chances to open maybe even 2 of them in your opening hand. And if you're not going for that, you still have enough space to just go for going second cards, which can be main decked, because this deck is really, really strong at going second overall. So a very, very good choice right now, I think. And the next one, also one of the older decks, is going to be Altergeist. Again, one of the decks that utilizes Mystic Mine to be able to slow the game down to their pace and build as much advantage as possible. Altergeist has always been known as a deck that when it gets going, it's very, very hard to stop. Because as a trap deck, like overall trap decks aren't that consistent. You have pot cards, which are incredible, but you still sort of rely on the cards you open in your opening hand way too much, because when it comes to something like a combo deck, there's always going to be different bridges among your cards in the deck. But with a deck like this, it just kind of feels like, okay, so I open my 5 cards and I need to do enough with those 5 cards basically if I don't open a pot card. So in those 5 cards, if you open something like Mystic Mine, you have enough time to get to all of your resources, because when you have enough to get to the field of Marionetter and to have a Faker online at all times, to have even spoofing, like that's just incredible. Obviously Protocol and things like that, like Hextia, like the second Hextia is summoned, the game is probably won, because you just start amassing so many resources and just going from one Hextia to another, getting even more things from the deck. So Kidis is always going to give you cards back, and it's just it's incredibly strong. On top of it, obviously being a trap deck, so you have enough space to play very, very specific trap cards which would be useful in the meta right now. So again, I think it's a good choice if that's the type of deck you want to be playing. There's a lot of different options on this list, so there's one for you. The next one is really interesting. It's going to be Crystal Beast. So Crystal Beasts, let's just hold on. Let's just take a step back and just appreciate the fact that Crystal Beast is seeing play. Like my heart is just so happy right now. I'm so happy right now. It's just great to see. And on top of that, everything is accessible in the structure deck. So naturally, this deck needed to make its way to my top budget decks list, because everything got a reprint in the structure deck, and what didn't get a reprint is just cheap in the structure deck overall. So something that's a new card and the new support is just so nice. You have the fusion, which is busted. It's just amazing. So if you go for an ultimate crystal monster before in your turn, you're able to summon it later. It's got a really nice effect. Obviously, it's cheap because it's from the structure deck, and it's just another monster for your end board, which overall is not bad at all. You have access to a lot of just generic stuff because you body spam a lot. So you are able to go into things like Apollousa, you're able to go into things like Dweller very easily, Masquerena even. There's a lot of options for you. Your entire extra deck just seems like this very useful toolbox basically to utilize in all of the situations, because you have enough bodies and you have enough gas in the deck to just do it. And then you have the fusion on top of everything, and then there's the trap cards, which again are support. The spell card also, I'll put everything up on the screen, but it's just very, very solid effects for the Crystal Beast deck, and there's enough space for you to be able to play tech cards as well. Like you have the Crystal Beast package, but you still have enough space, and it has been seeing tops as well. And I think post Darkwing Blast is going to be very interesting as well. And I wanted to mention it to just give you an idea, simply because like just getting 3 structure decks gets you a very, very long way. And also, if you maybe have Crystal Beast stuff from before, you can just put it in the deck, you know, have all of the max rarities and sort of flex on your opponents and play the Crystal Beast just played out. So I love to see it, honestly. The next one is going to be Chai Brigade. Now this has made its way to my list in the past, but Chai Brigade is also very strong right now in my opinion. Like, it's just nice to get it as an engine because it's budget obviously, but then you need to think about the fact that it can also be paired up with Sprite, which naturally Sprite is a bit more expensive, but at the end of the day, like, you can do whatever you want. So if you want to invest in Chai Brigade just because it's very cheap to pick up, you can always invest on top of it into a Sprite engine, for example, if you want to. And even if you don't want to, you still pick up the Lyrilisk stuff, which is cheap, you pick up Chai Brigade stuff, which is cheap, and you just play this deck because everything else in the deck is just hand traps and things like that. So you're able to counter the meta with enough space to play a ton of hand traps, and you also make just very, very solid boards. Overall boards when it comes to Chai Brigade have always been very strong, and it's also not that reliant on the field as it is in the current point in time. So if you get Dark Ruler, it's not that bad because you still have Revolt, which obviously is in the back row. So again, you have another layer of disruption. The only thing you need to think about, which might be a bit awkward in the deck because you summon that much, because you make such big boards essentially, sometimes you won't have space to really fire off the Revolt in a way that you would want to, which is go for Shiraig, obviously. Now you are able to summon back 3 monsters if you go for a Link 2 that was probably summoned before, but even having 3 free main monster zones is hard sometimes. So you really need to, like, it's not just building a board. I think it's a lot of thought goes into actually interacting with your opponent in ways that will help you when it comes to clearing the board to actually be able to do Revolt plays as well. So I think it's nice. I think it's just really, really, really nice. And not to mention the Scareclaw Link 1. It gave so much to the deck just for you to be able to go for, you know, banish 1 monster, summon it. The typing, of course, is perfect. And then you're able to link climb and do other plays. Whereas before, you would always have to have at least 2 monsters in the graveyard to do your initial, you know, effect summon. So the banishing of the types summon. So overall, I think the deck, again, like all of these, is a very, very good choice right now. And the next one is going to be Invoked. Now, there's a lot of Invoked lovers out there. It's one of those decks where someone just picks it up and, like, just goes with it for a very long time. It's what I've always seen. Like, it's very a fan favorite deck, you could say. And Nadir Servant came back. It's not expensive at all. Like, Nadir Servant is somewhere close to $10 and it is at 3 right now. But if you invest into this and you invest into Ecclesia, which is a couple more dollars, like around 5 or 6, I think, and then you invest into Invoked stuff, which is cheap overall, then you have the deck, basically. Like, there's not that much you need to invest into. Schism used to be an expensive card. It's not anymore. And just overall, I think the deck never really lost anything except for Nadir Servant going to 2, so a bit of consistency. But it just got power crept and people sort of deviated from it to other fusion summoning decks like Despia, for example. But Invoked is still a good choice. You have enough space to play a lot of hand traps and fill your flex spots with different types of things, on top of you being able to access all of the 3 engines. So when it comes to Invoked, Nadir Servant, so Ecclesia, Dogmatica engine, and then the Shaddoll stuff to just make Winda. Like, Winda is still a hell of a card, so I don't think this deck should be slept on. And it's kind of old right now, so all of you probably know what it does already, but just, I think Invoked might be a good choice right now simply because it's that cheap and you might already have like an Invoked engine lying around somewhere. So I wanted to mention this deck. Now the next 2 I sort of put, so we have 11 decks on this list. Actually, no, we even have more. I need to stop spoiling this. But the next 2 I put in 1 slot because it's Marincess and added Ignister. So I already put, I think, both of them on some of my budget videos lists before, so I won't get into that many specifics, but both decks are very, very, very cheap, and also they're both in 1 slot because they're both Cyberse decks. And I just wanted to mention both of them because we always talk about those 2 and also Salamangreat being just very viable Cyberse decks, but I still think both of them are better than Salamangreat at this point in time. And both of them do very, very similar things. They go for 1-card combos and have so much space to play hand traps. Like in Marincess, I'm pretty sure like My friend I think plays like around 20 hand traps. You have that much space. So there's that, and then there's your 1-card combos. You make a board which may not seem that broken at all, but you have the Marins's Wave trap card, which is very, very helpful. And you have all of the hand traps obviously to stop your opponents, so when they pass back to you, you can play your entire 1-card combo again, on top of you having the link from before, which is really big. Like, it has a lot of attack because of the effects of the field spell and things like that. So you're able to OTK quite easily actually if they just pass back to you, and if you do survive, which you probably will, then you just outright win. So this is like the perfect scenario. But then you need to think about a couple downsides, which would be that your normal summon sticking means a lot if you don't have the one that special summons from hand, or like an extender. Still, I don't think it's bad enough for you to not play the deck, because it's very, very, very accessible. And then the other one, Adignister, again, very similar things, but does end on Arrival Cyberse, which is just the towers. It's very hard to out. Although you have ways like Underworld Goddess and things like that, and decks actually like Tearlament. So the top decks actually started playing those cards to be able to deal with Adignister and things like that. And then another thing is the new trap card, so the Daruma Karma Cannon, which makes your opponent get rid of their cards. So that goes around the Arrival Cyberse's restriction as well. So again, there is a downside, but I still think it being that cheap, I think it's just worth picking up for you to have quite a viable deck. The next one is going to be Hero. So Hero right now is very, very cheap because of all of the reprints it has been receiving when it comes to things that were like hella expensive. Malicious Bane, Dusted Gold, all of that. And I wanted to mention it specifically because it's getting better and better due to Fusion Destiny being back and Dark Claw being an amazing card in the format right now. And just looking at Fusion Destiny, it's probably one of the most expensive cards in the deck right now, so it is something you need to invest into. But still, I wanted to mention Heroes because you might have a lot of hero stuff lying around. Like, I'm pretty sure almost every single Yu-Gi-Oh player does, so you're able to put together the hero deck quite easily. We have a Hero Lives at 3, which is also incredible for the deck, and it's just so explosive. It can OTK so easily. And with the new support, I actually wanted to mention the fact that it's very, very cheap. So if you're trying to play a different version of Hero, again, you have access to Instant Contact and all of the other things from Power of the Elements. And Instant Contact is a secret, but it's cheap. And everything else, like the Fusion is an Ocha, again, very, very cheap. And everything else, I think, is lower rarity. So it's also easily accessible. And I mean, it's Hero. Like, it's just a fan favorite. It's a solid going second deck. Also makes good boards going first. Plasma is amazing. And just, I would say it's a very good choice. And for the last deck, I wanted to mention Blackwing. We are on the topic of post Darkwing Blast. It would be kind of weird for me to not mention Blackwing. Looking at Darkwing Blast pre-sale prices, the only one that's a bit more expensive is one of them, which is around $14 or $16. The last time I checked, it was somewhere around that price point. But I think cards like these are going to go down in value. So that's something to think about. And just the support from Darkwing Blast, I've watched a ton of content and it just seems like it's very, very solid. The deck has been out obviously for a very long time, but it just never in the last couple of years got the push it needed. It just couldn't compete at the highest levels. The deck is incredibly fragile. Disrupting the link hurts a lot. If your normal summon gets removed, it also hurts a lot. So the Whirlwind stuff and the fact that it's that busted, it just doesn't really matter when you can get your plays going. So with this support, I think it's just what pushed it further. And if you're trying to play Blackwing, or if you had it from before, because again, it's an old deck, so you might already have a couple things on hand, I think it's a good choice. Things that were a bit more expensive also received reprints, so they're getting more and more accessible. And the toolbox of the extra deck, you're playing a ton of generic synchro stuff. Also the Blackwinged Assault Dragon, which is an amazing addition to the deck. So the direct support in Darkwing Blast is only around $20. So again, you're not going to be breaking a bank to build Blackwing right now. And it's just such a fan favorite. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you kept your Blackwing engines and just, you know, you were just like that, you know, hoping that we receive support. So now that we did, I think it's a cool investment if you want to. So there's Pot of Prosperity. Obviously, I didn't forget about it. So when it comes to Blackwing, when it comes to Crystal Beast as well, Prosperity is a very, very useful addition because those decks aren't that consistent. They aren't the best decks. They aren't bad choices, but they aren't the best decks. So investing into something like Prosperity is a smart choice, but I do realize it's much more expensive than probably most of your deck. So when it comes to situations like this, what I would advise you is just pick up the core if it's very, very cheap, and you can always add on top of it. So this is like a mantra of the channel at this point probably, but you can always get the Prosperities at some point in time. Overall, they're very generic cards, so they are a good addition to your Staples binder, I think. Okay, and then an extra deck I wanted to mention, just as an honorable mention, is the Goaty deck. So I'm still not sure how I should be pronouncing it. Some people say fish, some people say Goaty, but you know what I mean. It's the exclusive archetype which received support, or is receiving support, I should say, in Darkwing Blast. But I only wanted to throw it out there as an honorable mention because the pre-sale prices do seem to be around $15 to $20 for a lot of those cards. So it doesn't necessarily fall into like the cheapest category. But maybe if you had the engine from before, and if you're just looking into playing it, I still haven't looked into it that much to really know what it does 100%, but it does seem very interesting, so I wanted to throw it out there as an option if you're trying to invest into a deck like this. So may not be as budget as some other ones, but you know, it's just there as an option. If these types of videos help you, get you any kind of knowledge, information, like, I'm just so happy to hear that. So please let me know down in the comments. And yeah, if you like the video, of course, like it, sub to the channel, check out all the social media, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.